Hello everybody, this is a overview of the squish and squash or squash and stretch ball animation. So we have Maya here and we have a new scene, so you could start a new project file um, and just start new here. I would recommend your two panel layout and set one of them to uh, an orthographic view where you're just looking at the front or the side. If you need to change this, you could just go to panels, orthographic, and choose side. This should be good though for what we need. This front. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a sphere. So in the modeling tools, we're just going to go to sphere. Or you could just hit the spacebar and create polygon primitive sphere or NURBS primitive sphere. And we're just going to hit F to frame the ball. And what we're going to try to show is this ball bouncing. So right now we have, looks like 200 frames of animation in the timeline, and we're only looking at 93 of them. So we can use our scale tool to scale the view back and forth. But basically what we're going to try to do is just rough this in, and I'm just going to start in the side view here, and there's no real right answer as to how far this ball needs to bounce, but it's just a matter of spacing your keyframes so that it's a believable bounce. So I'm going to use W to move, and I'm just going to set a key with the S key on the 0 keyframe here, and just move my slider up. And so we could decide that the ball going up and coming down could take 50 frames, and we could scale that up since 100 is off here, or we could scale this up. However we want to plan this is up to us. You can shift these keyframes around as needed. The instructions pretty much give you a guideline. So the instructions are saying 20 frames to fall down and 20 frames to go back up. So this is kind of alluding to a ball that's going to fall from a ledge. So in this case, we would bring the ball up first, and just looking at our channel box, you can see the red, the dark red shows you that a keyframe has been set, but now that I've moved my ball up, you can see that it's pink. That means it's been modified. And so we can set this height to 10 and then hit S to commit that and overwrite that value there. And so just going with the instructions, 20 frames to fall, so we can advance our selection up to 20. I'm going to zoom in so that we have a bit of a closer view, and just move the ball down until it makes contact with the grid, and then hit S, and Maya should just automatically do the work for us between the two keyframes. Okay, and if we open up our graph editor, just go to animation editors and go to graph editor, we should see the keyframe, the translation of Y. So this is the ball starting at 0 and then going to 20. and the line shows you how it's getting from those two values. Straight line being linear, this is an ease out and an ease in keyframe. I'm just going to move this off the screen here. So for now, this is the first part. We could scrub this to preview this, and it says to go back up another 15 frames to fall. I'm sorry, 20 frames to go back up. So if we are unsure of where we were, one way to jump from keyframe to keyframe is just use the less than and greater than keys on the keyboard. So here we're at 10, and we're just going to go to 40. So we're going to zoom out, and we're going to move our ball to 40. I'm sorry, our ball to 10 on Y, and then hit S to commit that. First get out of the value and then hit S. So now we should have a ball falling, hitting an imaginary plane, and then bouncing back up. And then the idea that when a ball bounces, it slowly loses energy each time and after each bounce. So that's why you wouldn't go, back to 20 again. So now we're going to go to 15 frames. So 45, or 55 rather. 40 plus 15 is 55. And so we'll move our ball down. And hit S again. And if it's too hard to see here and you're not getting it perfect, you can always go back and edit that particular keyframe where you're not, going far enough down. You can make it look like it's making contact. So we'll just preview that for now. Hit the play button. So you kind of have a ball falling off of a ledge, hitting the contact plane, bouncing up, and then slowly losing inertia, and then we're going to bounce up again, and so we're going to go to 70. And go half the height. So before we're at 10, now we're going to be going to 70, but the height should be about half, because the ball is not going to bounce as high as it was before. It should bounce less. So we're going to hit S. And then 15 frames later, or rather 10 frames, 8 frames, 5 frames, 3 frames, 2 frames. So what we should have is a series of bounces that progressively get smaller and smaller. Okay, so I really feel like the instructions are a guide. So, you know, if you have keyframes that aren't on 20, aren't on 40, um, I am not I'm not going to be deducting points for something that's not perfect. The idea here is that you're creating something that looks like it could be a bouncing ball. So I just kind of want to make that clear that this is a subjective um, uh, process where you're looking at values, you're observing, and then you're creating what could otherwise be a bouncing ball. So um, 10, if for me, could be 9 for you. Um, I'm not. I don't care really. Um, Here, I think though I am pretty much inclined to want to have the same value where it hits. So here I am changing this value. It's pink. I'm going to hit S. So I'm just going back and I'm fixing my mistakes. This one I'm going to make 1. And honestly, if you had a camera and the camera doesn't, isn't low enough that you're going to see that contact, it's not going to matter whether you have 100th of a point value there or not. It's not going to matter in the long run. Um, so here we're at the top, and then we're going to fall. In class, I did show that there's these tools. If you go under animation and you go to visualize, you can choose to ghost your object, and okay, and then to turn off ghosting or to set the ghosting options if needed, you just go into open ghosting editor, and you can change like the amount of ghosting, how many seconds you would like to see in terms like of trailing in front or behind. I just would use this as a reference tool. I really wouldn't probably keep it on for a long period of time just because of it, the distracting nature. But it's a good reference. The graph editor here is useful for changing the key types. Also, copying and pasting keys is easier to do in this graph editor. If you select any of these keys, like I could select this key, I know that the ball is at the top, it's going to fall, it's going to bounce, it's going to go to the top, then it's going to fall, and then this is going to be another complete arc here, or curve. So the next point is going to be hitting the base. So I can just do a Control C here, and then wherever this time slider is, and if you hit paste, Control V, it'll paste that in. Okay, I'm just going to continue to apply squash and stretch to this sphere, and I'm using the graph editor, the Y height value over time to kind of to gauge its overall progress. I think looking at this visually, I might want to reduce this just a bit because I'm seeing that the ball really isn't losing height enough. So I'm just kind of looking at this and I want to make it progressively a shorter bounce height. So that looks a little bit better for me. I haven't even previewed it, but I'm just looking at it and I think that looks better. I animated this and I forgot to hit the record button, so I'll just undo and redo this. So you can get the idea of how to place a squash and stretch here. And I'm going to go ahead and refix this. So here, what you want to do is just go ahead and set hold keyframes on either side, S and S. That way, from here to here, it's holding its form, and then from here to here, it's squashing. this guy, I need to move him over a little bit. Now here is going to be our squash. So I'm going to go ahead and hit R for scale and scale it down vertically. I think 0.5 is where a good amount is, and we're just going to expand it out. This is subjective, but we're trying to make it look like it's retaining volume. Maybe even 1.3 would be good. The textbook, just to refer to that, sets the squash to like 0.4. So it's really subjective. So whatever you think is going to look good. So when you scale it here, it's just unfortunately going to use the middle, the center of the sphere. So we're just going to go ahead and move that down. And then go ahead and set our translate. And that's kind of our cool little bounce. So this needs to continue along the curve. So at the top, you're probably not going to have a squash, but at the bottom, and again, we can use our less than, greater than to skip from one key to the next key. You can use S to set the key for the sphere in this location. It's in the middle of falling, so we could probably use the graph editor. I'm going to grab the X. We don't want rotate. Really, we're concerned about translating on X, Y, and Z. And we could just copy this, paste, and paste. So we're actually copying translation X, Y, and Z. That's just position information. And using that to build the keys in the timeline. And looks like we have about the same amount of space here. So however you want to do it, I'm showing you a multitude of ways to do things. I think for the most part it's important to experiment. This one obviously is going to be the squash key. So I'm going to go ahead and scale 0.5 and then 1.5, tab, 1.5. Then hit enter. S. And then locate this down and then set the key again. Now something's happening here where for some reason I may have just goofed up. So this key, really, the form should be 1 again. So I'm going to type 1. Select all these, type 1, hit enter, and then select these and then hit S. Same thing here. I'm just going to go in these values, select these values, press 1, hit enter, and then set the keys by selecting the text and hitting S. You may not even need to do that. There you go. So now we got our squash. Yeah, copying and pasting from the graph editor may have not been the best choice in doing what I was doing. But I want you just to know that you can duplicate keyframes within the graph editor, and it can make your life a little easier. So there you go. There's a little squash there. He goes to the top, and then he's going to fall down again. And so here, this key right here, I'll just go ahead and can right click and I can copy this key, and I can go here and I can paste. So this is another way to do it. So right click copy, right click and paste. So these should be 3 of the same keys here. And they're a little too close, so I'm going to just go ahead and space them out. Might need to zoom into my timeline so I can fix that spacing. There, it's better. And I'm going to use the left and right greater than and less than sign. Okay, and then we got our scale again, so I'm just going to do 0.5, I think we were doing, and 1.5, 1.5. Set those, move this down, and commit that. So here we got a problem too, squashing, and then it's going back, and then going up to the top, and then it's starting to transition to a squash. So here on this keyframe, I'm going to set these to 1. And then set those keys. Same thing here. 1 and set. There's some kind of weird thing going on here now. It's falling. So if I have an extra keyframe in here that doesn't need to be here, looks like it. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this keyframe and delete. Alrighty. Set those to 1. S. Maybe I have multiple keyframes here. Oh, I might be setting this wrong, or I might be creating that key on accident. Let me try that again. So 1, set your keys with S. There, that's better. You really gotta check the result of what's going on here. So mean, that's pretty much the majority of what you need to do. Um, the item that says tangents have been modified. So tangents meaning these keys here. Um, you can modify these tangents by selecting them and then just grabbing the handle. Let me pause this for a minute. Okay, just a final note on this. In the assignment, it encourages you to explore the different types of tangent types and key types in your animation. So, um, one way that you can do that, the best way to do that is through the graph editor. So, um, experimentation is good. Um, when you select your keys, you can change the way that the object transitions into the key. So this is sort of a slow into the key, and we're talking about a scale key. So what's happening here is we're 100% scale, or 1, and then we're going down to 0.5. So the keys can kind of change what's going on. So if you make this a very quick, it's sort of slow, very very gradual, and then a very quick transition into that key, and then a very quick transition out. It's like a pop. It's like literally popping, and that may not be an ideal look. So this I got by just going to break tangents. When you break it, it allows you to move the handles independently of one another. So that's what this is here. Changing this, if you select this and go to tangent, there's an in tangent and an out tangent. And just think of this as like if this is the key, from the left hand side you're going in, so that's the in tangent, and from the right hand side going out, that's the out tangent. So if I wanted to change from here to here as a linear key, I would select this, go to tangent, and that would be the out tangent, and I can change it to linear, and now that's set to linear. I would change the in tangent here to linear. So now that's a linear transition, which is just very gradual and robotic, and it may not really seem like much of a change, but the idea here is to experiment. The other way is just to select these and hit these linear tangent button shortcuts, and then that will just grab those handles there and put them, align them with one another. So yeah, this is kind of like the idea. And if you have any further questions, please feel free